Hey, everybody, this is David Bloom with Next TMT. I'm here with my co founder and colleague Daniel Frankel talking about all things technology, media, and telecom. This week, despite the doldrums and dog days of mid August, has proven to be quite festive. Thank you very much to Paramount Skydance, the new company under David Ellison, which made another eye popping deal. Actually, a couple of deals. We'll talk about that. The NBA is showing its schedule finally under the new regime with Amazon and Peacock and NBC, as well as old hands ESPN. And we're looking at what Dan likes to call churn season with the NFL, as it is on about 427 different platforms, a game or two, it feels like. So it's going to be a complicated time for sports fans. There's much else out there, but let's just get started, if we could, Dan, with churn season. What's churning, buddy? Not just butter.
Well, I think it's not a secret. Subscription video streaming is a sign up for what you want, take advantage of the quick, easy capability, and get out of there before they charge your credit card another time for something you're not going to watch.
Like there's one game you really care about. I don't know, Texas, Ohio State college football game, or I don't know, the opening
or if you're Trojan fans like us, you're not quite as vested. You know, you watch a couple of games, you see the first couple of losses. No football playoff.
You're a Northwestern fan, and you lose two, and you go, this isn't going to go good. No surprises this year.
Right. So it was Samsung ads this week that released a statistic saying that folks that sign up during the season for top streaming services that have the NFL, I assume they don't be Netflix, because Netflix doesn't have a lot of churn, and they only have 2 games a year. And I don't think they mean Amazon, because Amazon's offering is very diffuse. It's also free shipping and a bunch of other things.
Right. I mean, it's almost an afterthought. And we're not even clear. I mean, there's a couple 100 million Amazon Prime subscribers.
How many totally different animal.
Yeah, it's the video is like, oh, look at this. There's also some video here. I got a free book. Or look, here's some stuff I could put in my video game. How cool is that? Yeah, that's kind of really what it is. Yeah.
I think Samsung's talking about Paramount plus Peacock, which, if you look at their statistics, they set up a lot of people the latter part of the fourth quarter into the first quarter, and then drop a bunch of people around March. If you look at seasonality of a virtual pay TV service like YouTube TV, drops off a cliff right around the first quarter after a big fourth quarter. So it's kind of a seasonal problem, and what are you going to do about it? You look at some of the regional sports networks, that their whole model is built around that seasonality. I don't think they expect to get much in the fallow months. So what do? Probably nothing. But virtual MVPs can do something. They can, as Sling TV proved this week, you can charge a gate. You can charge $4.99 to access the service for a day. You can charge, I think it's $9.99 a weekend and $15 for a week. What that does is you monetize these sort of itinerant users, and you keep them from becoming part of your churn statistical problem. So
they're kind of drive-by users. You're monetizing your drive-by users who are taking advantage of the system's whole in other places. I suspect this may find other adherents. I'm just guessing. The other way to deal with this is actually a little bit about what happened. I hate to only talk about sports, but the reality is sports is where it's happening for a lot of the streamers right now as they try to lock down these rights. 2 different smaller players made big plays to get rights to things that are actually available most of the year. One was the deal between NBC, Peacock, and its future Versant, former cable networks,
right,
the Golf Channel, and actually it shows on places like CNBC. They did a deal with the U.S. Golf Association for...
It's not Versant?
You in France, with the other folks, may say Versant. You don't say the T, it's a Versant. They did a deal. It's actually interesting to me because it's the big 3, the U.S. Open, the U.S. Women's Open, the U.S. Senior Open are going to be on Comcast channels, NBC and Peacock. 11 other championships of younger, older, male, female, or slices the USGA does, amateur, pro, so on and so forth. Will be on the Golf Channel, as well as sort of shoulder programming around the big 3 tournaments. But they're going to be interacting and continue to be enmeshed years after.
Statistics that blew my mind. Yeah. I thought golf has had a moment for the last 30 years. I thought it was a very popular global sport that wasn't growing kind of on an explosive arc, but it has done a hockey stick, but a golf club, according to your.
Well, according to the USGA and its surveys, which is at least, grain of salt or whatever is appropriate in your mineral references when it talks to golf stats. But big explosion in interest and in players, about 50% since the pandemic. And some of that makes total sense. Pandemic hits. I remember there were lots of folks out on the golf course and they weren't much of any other place. They weren't being able to play racquetball or whatever. Golf, you're out there in the green, you're walking around, you're a long way from everybody else. You're not going to get anything. So it really took off during the pandemic and people were like, oh, I'd like to take up golf sometime. Pick up golf sometime. It was that or guitars, and golf's more annoying, but it's still more straightforward. So they did. And now it's like 47 million Americans play golf. And a significant chunk of additional people say they want to take it up in the next year. And both those numbers are way up from before the pandemic. So that bodes well for somebody to watch the Golf Channel, whatever Versant ends up being. The other one that I thought was really good, I mean, golf, again, mostly year round. There are tournaments and playing and things going on year round, right?
I've seen it's on the viral internet. It was part of the early aughts Bush era that came and went, where they have him, George Bush Jr. is on a golf course, and they asked him about the terrace.
He was not technically a junior. He was a W.
So he says, we're going to get the terrace. The terrace can't win. His typical tough talk statesman thing that he was doing back those days. And he goes, watch this drive. And at the time, I thought the guy was an asshole, but that has aged well, because now, compared to the current leadership, he kind of looks cool. And I think that's...
Well, at least you mean the current leadership who randomly, repeatedly cheats and both with his own stuff and everybody else's balls and wins tournaments.
He could fucking play. Exactly.
Right. I mean, Bush, of course, could play. He was raised in a country club. He was given a club about an hour after he was born. And, he was the Bambi of the golf course. Of course, he knew how to play golf. Of course.
I miss his swagger.
Yeah. Well, and he actually had some sense of modesty and decorum that came from his waspy grandparents, et cetera, et cetera.
He wouldn't roll out red carpets for Vladimir Putin. Let's put that.
Yeah,
way.
right. He was not rolling out red carpets for ex-KGB thugs. The other sport that I thought was interesting, or sports deal, was the $7.7 billion deal for UFC, an Ultimate Fighting Championship rights for the next 7 years, only North America, for the insurgent, whatever surge you want to talk about, Paramount Plus, and also CBS. And
when I first thought about that, and I'll let you keep going. I'm just going to digress for a second. I don't watch a lot of UFC pay-per-view, but I've watched some at parties and highlights or lowlights on ESPN.
Yeah,
where they say on Sports Center, we're going to warn you, turn away if you're squeamish, and you'll see something involving an eye socket that you know that could happen, or gruesome injuries. When they say brutal sport, they mean it with UFC. It's tough business, and that's a family platform, the Paramount Plus. I hope they know what they're getting into.
Well, I think it's a good one to stack up right next to Nickelodeon programming. It should be awesome. More importantly, though, there are two things that I find fascinating. Three things, really. One, gigantic freaking deal. All right. So you've just spent $8 billion to buy rights, control of the studio. You get 70% control.
Just as much for a sports rights deal. Yeah.
And then 7.7, nearly as much for one deal with UFC. And then, so that's big. And that's part of a much bigger bar tab that David Ellison's running up. I think all of it's defensible, but it's like, these are really big numbers and wow. And then the third thing is they're getting rid of pay-per-view. You talked about watching pay-per-view. I just never did. I'm going to watch people beat each other up and pay per view to watch it, like $40. It's like, nah, I'm good. I never did that. But the point is, they're going to make it go away. This has been part of the UFC experience for decades, however long it's been around. And now it's going away. So it's going to be free to everybody on Paramount Plus, and it's going to be on CBS, marquee events, as they call them. I think there's 13 of them a year. So that's about one a month to help shore up.
Fights on the Tiffany Network.
Yeah. What they're going to do is they're going to take former CBS News reporters and put them in the ring, in the octagon to duke it out with Fox News people. It should be big. Should be awesome. Anyway, but that's a huge deal. Getting rid of UFC, so you're totally changing the economics of that sport to drive both streaming and your broadcast. And then finally, it's going to change who the stars are. I mean, people like John Jones, who I actually saw on various things, he's retired. Conor McGregor, who was part of the four biggest UFC cards ever, is dealing with a little legal problem that I won't dive into because I don't know enough really to give it chapter and verse.
Give an Irish prison.
Yeah, Conor is in a bit of trouble. So he's getting old too. So you need new stars. Well, this will mint new stars with much bigger visibility than was really likely to happen under UFC pay-per-view, a much bigger audience. I mean, 77 million on streaming. God knows who shows up in broadcast these days, but those can be big audiences, right? Coming out of, say, the football game, the Big Ten football game on a Saturday night, right? And then you go to UFC, and then you got your Saturday Night Live.
Ask an uncomfortable question. You and I are on the older side of the equation. We would agree with that, right?
I'm barely still in the equation, but yes.
We could safely say that our days of having to worry about going someplace and somebody telling us, let's say a bar, saying, that guy you just told to fuck off, he's a UFC fighter.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous society we live in. And
well, I was always 6'3", 230. I used to say, I don't go looking for trouble and trouble doesn't come looking for me. And that's generally true.
Sort of like,
oh, yeah. You know, who are that guy, Alan, whatever his name is, Alan Richer, not Reacher, Alan, whatever his name is, who plays Reacher is, it's like, why does anybody do anything that doesn't involve like a tank to take him out, you know, because he's just gigantic. That being said, there's a set of issues you don't go in, and one of them is not to go into a bar showing combat sports on a Saturday night by after 10 o'clock because they're liquored up, they're jacked up, and bad stuff will happen. It's just,
listen, it's mainstream now, and I'm not going to stop it. And I sure grew up loving the fights. I remember watching Hagler Hearns and just being enthralled. So I'm not above the blood sports, but they are getting bloodier. And I never thought I'd see a day, I probably should have thought I'd see a day, where something like the UFC, just bare knuckle elbows, can go places where you never thought they could. It's dangerous shit. To see $7.7 billion thrown at it was eye-opening. It's here. It's not going away. It's right up there with the NBA and NFL. Well, in terms of what we're interested in, it's not quite that scale yet. But
the thing is, and you talked about us being of a certain age, this is a sport, such as it is, dogfighting for dodos.
It's a sport. Yeah, they train for it. It's very athletic.
It's an athletic endeavor, competition that goes on year round. And so that is the one way. It is like golf. You know, golf is played about 11 and a half months of the year. There's competitions and things going on. So this is going on pretty much year round. And that's really what a programmer wants, is something to fill in those schedules so we don't have that churn season that you were talking about.
Right.
And
I'm not denigrating its legitimacy as a sport. It is definitely the men and women who practice it are elite athletes at every level. They have to, otherwise they get hurt.
A, enormously physically gifted, and B, slightly crazy.
Yeah, it's just it looks really flippin'
Yeah, it gets a little bit down to that level. So absolutely. So anyway, but a big deal. And then on top of that, because I guess Ellison wasn't done, the news came out that they believe that they have locked up the Duffer Brothers, the young brothers behind Stranger Things, one of the 2 or 3 biggest things in the history of Netflix. And for Cindy Holland, who helped bring them to Netflix after they did a couple of years of an interesting show on Fox and a movie that was also interesting but didn't do literally anything, like less than $1 million in box office. She brought them there. They had a show, a big throwback to 80s nostalgia. Also creepy as all get out and extremely well done and great humor and thrills, chills, and scares. Now they're going to finish up some of the stuff they're doing, like the Burrows and the last season of Stranger Things, and then head off to a 9-figure deal with Paramount and Paramount Plus, which feels a lot like what Netflix did in 2017.
No, they did this because they want to do theatrical movies.
Well, that's the funny part. So they're going to go off to a place mostly to do streaming too, but they want to do movies. They've only done one movie and it didn't do much, but they want to have that big theatrical release. And my speculation is that when your dad is worth 250 billion or 300 billion, whatever it is this hour, you can put on better parties than they do over at Netflix. Sorry, Ted, but just saying, it's probably right. But Paramount stock shot up this week. It went up. At one point, it was up about 60% for the week. That was probably mostly a short squeeze. Something we've seen before around like AMC Entertainment and GameStop, where heavily shorted stock, small float. The guys who like to do the short stuff, get up over their skis, and these internet retail guys start scheming to screw with them, and they drive the price right up. So that was part of what happened. But I think also some of it was a good reaction to some of this news without worrying a whole lot about how Paramount's going to pay for it. When you've got Daddy Larry backing you up, it's not going to go broke. It's not like it was with Sherry Redstone. Every day he's like, is she going to make the next debt payment? It's been rough for a good decade. This is not that. But you had another thing. You took your eldest boy back to Berkeley. Great that he's there. He's wrapping things up one more year. I had a lot of fun getting up there, it sounds like. But while you were there, you watched the extremely well-received new spin-off series from the whole Aliens franchise called Aliens Earth, or Alien Earth, or Alien. I can't remember if it's plural.
Alien colon Earth, yeah.
Alien colon Earth, where the alien goes right up the colon of Earth and rips it a new one. Basically, a bunch of cool, horrific new creatures land on the planet. Planet's not doing great. It's been sort of extrapolated from where we are now to some places you really don't.
The Alien franchise has been extrapolated since 1979.
Right. This is a 45-year-old. I got to tell you, brief alien story. I was in school at Mizzou, and they used to have this thing where every weekend they would sell tickets to a movie. It was like the second run. It had been in theaters for a couple of months, and then they would bring them to the big auditorium in the big administrative building in the center campus and sell tickets for a whopping 25 cents, which was at that point still a lot of money for a student because I was old. But I remember one weekend, the one I was seeing comes back. She picks up the tickets. We were going to go see Superman, the Christopher Reeve Superman. We said, well, I was there. I also got this one called Aliens with the S. And I go, okay, haven't heard much about it, but sure. And we went. She spent the entire movie basically with her head buried in my lap, and not in a good way. And I'm sitting there just kind of holding on, going, because it's a really well done film. But man, it is.
Was this the Jim Cameron?
It's just the Cameron the sequel. Like it's a little bit like the Huckleberry Finn of alien films. Like the second one is even better. The first one very well done.
Different movie, very clever, very well done.
Yeah. Sigourney Weaver being, kick ass, and it was really well done, but really pretty intense.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different iterations. A lot of different filmmakers have been involved with the franchise.
Yeah, but and game makers, by the way. They make some scary damn games having the monster chasing you around.
At its heart, though, it's always been about a mistrust about our ability to handle advanced technologies, our ability to manage artificial intelligence.
Yeah,
I don't know if you saw the prequel movies that Ridley Scott did in the last decade. Prometheus.
I'm not a horror guy. I mean, life is horrible enough. I mean, I'm very blessed. Let me just say that. But I don't need to bring this stuff in.
Two movies, Prometheus and Alien Covenant, they kind of return the story to Earth. They're very different as well. And they, probe existential questions, and a lot of it about dark thoughts about AI. Anyway.
Sure. You could do the kind of deep analysis of the alien subtext the way people have done about Night of the Living Dead for even longer, right? About zombies and consumer culture and all that. Well, this is kind of like that, only with things that hug your face. So they did this, and you actually had an interesting equivalence here. You mentioned the remake.
It was sort of
Ronald Moore of Battlestar Galactica, which was spectacularly great.
I think people were blown away by it because Battlestar Galactica was kind of a showy Richard Hatch, Lauren Green, expensive TV series from the 1970s. Like I remember they shot.
But a little cheesy too. Let me just be clear. 70s TV visual effects, not very effective or visual.
I remember being a 7-year-old watching the crew film the Cylons at the
Yeah.
Oviatt Library at Cal State Northridge, which was just down the street from my home.
There are still Cylons in the Cal State Northridge Library. I just want to say they've been spotted.
They fell down during the earthquake and never got up. But
they never got out.
Battlestar Galactica was really kind of dark and brooding and captured this sort of paranoia and besiegement, trust.
Well, speaking of George Bush, the George Bush era, right? The W era, this was a reaction to 9/11 and the clampdown that came afterward and all that stuff, right? I mean, it was, and the enemy within, that's what that was about. So say we all, which has now been taken on as a proud
is under the direction and creation of forget Mr. Hawley, Jebediah Hawley,
Noah Hawley.
Noah Hawley, thank you, who was a writer
of the Bible,
Fargo, the TV series.
Yeah,
and it's really well done. Timothy Oliphant plays a synthetic in Earth about 100 years from now, which is sort of conflicted by humans, kind of hybrid genetic cyborg type people, and also pure play synthetic humans. And all of them are distrustful of each other and clannish. And in this backdrop of conflict and division comes this threat from beyond in the first episode. That's as far as I've got, but I was blown away with how on the nose it felt. So you too were enthralled by a series. This one was 96% fresh. Yours was 3% fresh.
It was a movie, actually, right. And I was enthralled by the unlikely story of it. So a neighbor and friend of mine, Linda Dorff, did some unit publicity on this thing back during the pandemic, and now it's finally out. It's called War of the Worlds, and it may sound very familiar, and that is intentional. The creator behind it, Patrick Aiello, realized that the H.G. Wells original novel's coming out of copyright, and so he pulls together this little tiny film. He's been very tight for years now with the great, slightly crazy Kazakh Russian filmmaker Timur Bekmambetov, who created a really interesting technology called Screen Life. And I've seen it pop up in a couple of interesting little Sundance movies over the last few years. But basically, it uses a set of technologies to try to represent on screen the ways we communicate with text messaging and phone and all that stuff, all the different email and all that, and put all that on screen in a way that's visually compelling and can help tell a story, but in a way that's better than looking over something.
And the buzz, I heard about this 2 weeks ago, and the buzz was just terrible. And
it was like, oh, it's terrible, it's awful, but let's watch it.
When I read in your post today that it's selling like gangbusters on Amazon Prime Video.
Yeah, it was number 1 or 2 for at least 2 weeks, 451 million minutes watched at least. When I talked to him, I think Tuesday, I was cranking along, and his point was like, initially they had a 0% critical Rotten Tomatoes, 0, and now it's all the way up to 3%. So somebody broke. But the point of the movie to me is not whether it's good or bad, because really it's a less than $10 million. It's considerably below 10 million is what he told me, significantly below 10 million. But it's got a couple of people you heard of, Eva Longoria and Ice Cube. It is a little story about a guy trying to save his daughter in the middle of an invasion, but it's also got a little social commentary because the monsters like data. They like to eat data. So there's a little commentary in there. But both the benefit for the film and the problem is, and he freely admits, it sets up a set of expectations about what the film will be. It's going to be like Steven Spielberg. It's going to be like the 14 other versions of War of the Worlds that have come along, or Orson Welles should be there. If not HG, how about Orson? And it's not any of that stuff. There's a little bit of stuff. We've got a trailer in the news.
I've never seen the first one, by the time I saw it, was dated. I never saw a version of War of the Worlds that I liked. The one with Tom Cruise 20 years ago, that wasn't Spielberg. Who directed that?
I don't remember. It's I didn't watch. I actually read the book, so I don't need to watch a movie about it.
At one point, he's got a teenage son, and he's trying to keep him safe with him. They're out trying to.
They're trying to take care of their kid. Well, they do this minus.
He's next to like the kid and Tom Cruise are next to the battle lines. The kid's like, I gotta see this. No, you'll get killed. No. what's there to see? It was full of so many holes where you just didn't understand the characters' motivations.
Right.
I feel like I'd like to see a good version of War of the Worlds.
This may not be that either, based on some of the. I mean, the fans are only like 28%, but to me, the interesting thing is they made this thing for a tiny amount of money. They did it through Universal. Universal paid him enough. He produced it using his money. Always it seems like a bad idea, but did it using his money. Then Universal bought it from him, turned around, licensed it to Amazon. Amazon, because it's a third-party thing, they gave it zero promotion. He did a couple of little things as best he could with Linda and stuff. But glory be, it's the middle of summer. There's not a lot going on. There's not a lot on. I mean, Heads of State, which is I had mentioned in our newsletter a couple months ago, was a pretty entertaining little film with Idris Elba and John Cena.
Yeah, I watched it.
It was a fun little film, right? That had been in theaters for a good month, so there wasn't really a whole lot to occupy folks. It's late summer. There's not much stuff in the theaters. That's always the dead zone for movies. And here's this thing that's called War of the Worlds sitting there, and they've got enough things that look like bad stuff going to happen to make you think, okay, this is going to be a big action film, and it's right here, and it's free because it's Amazon. So Amazon Prime. So they were number one for like 6 days and number two for the rest of the second week. And I mean, 451, I mean, that's like based on the length of the film, that's like, 4 million viewers, households viewing. You can't do apples to oranges or apples to apples on like if that was a theater thing. But his point was you couldn't do this in theaters, which, a $10 million film is deeply dependent on critical reviews.
You're not going to get Ice Cube of being Shakespearean trained.
Right. Shakespearean trained hip hop star. And also, Cube's actually a very solid actor. And
I don't know. I mean, I think the
well, I'll tell you, Barbershop, he did great with Barbershop, and he was the producer of Barbershop. So he's a when I was at MGM, he was doing gangbusters with Barbershop.
Sure.
Had an audience, had a fan base, did it for a price, delivered that audience and a good experience.
Wasn't Friday his too?
I believe Fridays are his too. I mean, so he's a serious filmmaker and in front of cameras too. So to me, the really interesting thing is they were able to do all this thing for a very tiny price. Amazon gets a bunch of views.
He's in the studio. HBO's the studio.
No, again, it was.
No, it was him.
What?
Ice Cube is in the studio.
The show, the studio. Yeah. I mean, everybody's in that show. It's almost like, okay, who in Hollywood who's actually gotten a paycheck in the last 6 months is not in the show? It's one of those kinds of things. Anyway, I just thought it was an interesting and the exact opposite of some giant, Hulu, Disney hit it out of the park franchise that's been around for decades and stuff. But he knew there was an arbitrage value in that name, and he had to do some serious talking with the MPAA, which controls the names of films. But with it going into the eminent domain, I don't think they had as much control, and he was able to get a sign off, including from Spielberg. So look at that.
Yeah, it's either that or data centers. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And speaking of War of the Worlds, I just want to say we had a little announcement about IBC, International Broadcasting Conference, the far and away biggest thing in Europe in the broadcast business, that we will be involved in. Talk a little bit about that because you've been the mastermind behind all this conversation.
Well, we're part of their list of media partners this year, which is great. We're sandwiched between the venerable Next TV, my former employer, and multi-channel news, which is
no longer really, we should not say venerable, no longer really functional.
But they don't exist anymore. They're zombie brands that prop up a honoraria. Did I pronounce that correctly this time?
Honoraria is indeed a word. It's a plural of honorarium.
The
There's no honorarium involved.
Hall of Fame, which is entering the 2025 cycle.
It's just another shakedown.
Basically, the ad sales department at Future PLC selects it. Personally find it astounding that they had content creators, self included, John Lafayette included, like us, working for them for years. They couldn't come up with a media strategy. Now they've got an editorial strategy based on zombie.
No editorial.
Whatever.
That's the editorial strategy. There's no editorial operation whatsoever, except whoever the sales guys think they can sell, ads on.
If Jimmy Pitaro's people want to sponsor this shit, Godspeed. Anyway, we're going to be partners with the IBC. We're going to do a show preview on Thursday, September 4th. It's going to be great. We are also going to send you, David, I do believe, to attend and hopefully speak and be a presence at the show. We're still working that part out.
Yeah, I'm figuring out details of that as we speak. It's a fairly short turnaround, but my spouse and I are conferring with many dear friends and family about cool places to hang in Amsterdam. And Amsterdam ain't cheap, but it's supposed to be pretty cool. And I like my tulips, I gotta say, and my street vendor made herring. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, we're planning to hit the show among other things, and I'll be doing some other stuff. Nothing wrong with a little Rembrandt looking at as well. So that's coming up. But if you want to be a sponsor, we are certainly willing to talk about how we can help amplify your brand. So I'll just throw that out there. Sponsorship at nexttmt.com is the place to contact, and Dan's the man will hook you up. We think there's a real opportunity here for folks to reach a really interesting audience while we talk about what's happening in the show, what's coming down the pike, notable things there, notable things in Amsterdam as well around the show and beyond. And look forward to that in a couple of weeks. So kind of fun.
So that, winding down the issue, I was going to talk about our great data center revelation. It turns out there's fears that it could be just as it was a fiber glut at the turn of the century. All these folks thought there was going to be massive sudden increases in internet usage, and there were eventually, but it took a while.
But that's the point. They were eventually right. All that fiber has been used and lots more. All that dark fiber that Global Crossing put in the ground and then it went bankrupt was nowhere near enough to keep up with all the fiber we're using now. And God almighty with AI.
And I think AI will get there, but there's a fear that the initial investment is going to sink some people before it does.
It will sink some people. You can't have, random, gigantic, magnificent seven companies say, we're going to spend $100 billion on data centers this year, and it should be fine. Sam Altman from OpenAI had a lot to say this week. He had a dinner, he and some other OpenAI executives had a dinner with some folks up in the Bay Area, including the guy from The Verge. And he said they're going to need trillions of dollars in investment. That feels a little rich.
Listening to them. They sent an executive order last week, greenlighting all sorts of permitting provisions and power access and just all sorts of.
Well, that's all great at the federal level.
But there are warning indicators. For one, China is ahead of us. They invested a ton in data centers, and now they have too many. They're canceling projects and facing a glut. You've got Microsoft, which has pulled back on its data center allocation. Some of that has to do with its relationship, close one, with OpenAI.
Right. So why build more when OpenAI is already building a ton of stuff and you own $10 billion worth of the company or whatever it's worth now? It's probably worth 80 billion something.
You have, the startup in China, Deep Throat. I forget what it's called, but
Deep Seek.
They did an LLM.
Watergate story. Yes.
They did an LLM that uses a fraction of the computational.
Well, they didn't actually do an LLM. What they did was use inferencing on top of, we think, because they haven't been completely a full disclosure. They may have cut some corners and stuff for strategic purposes, strategic PR purposes. Whatever they did at a pretty high level for
They were able to
less money.
Show off a product that was comparable to GPT, but used a fraction of the resources.
Yeah. That wasn't GPT-5, by the way, which just came out. That was GPT-4, or one variant of GPT-4. Still a very interesting lesson.
It has some folks thinking that the original estimates may be off. There is kind of an assumption that eventually you need more. But it's like, should the build out be slower and more gradual than what Sam Altman would like?
Well, yeah, there are other issues. Gary Marcus, the NYU professor emeritus and longtime AI researcher, got on CNBC on, I think, Friday. He said, it's ChatGPT's GPT-5 is better than some. He said, it took me 20 minutes to find things that it did wrong. Gary's become a very acerbic and, for understandable reasons, critic of many of the pell-mell justifications and hype and everything else around the massive expenditures on AI and the justifications to blow through every possible stop sign or yellow light, warning of any kind. And he's not wrong. Some of this ends up becoming, I think, self-modulating, self-balancing or rebalancing. Yes, all those really enthusiastic projections are absolutely going to get cheated back in some ways. That's just how it goes when reality catches up with enthusiasm, and not to mention limits on how much power, how much data center construction we can do, even with Trump's executive order, which doesn't do anything about local zoning, for instance, or state regulation of utilities and so on and so forth. There are gating.
I thought that was addressed. That was a major part of it, that it eases a lot of those regulations.
Well, but an executive order from the president only does X amount. He literally does not have the power to throw out local zoning laws, for instance. So he can expedite stuff, yes,
Right.
but there are limits. Presidential orders, even with this bunch of yokels on the Supreme Court, have some limits. And, this sounds good. It's another headline, big deal. We'll see where it goes. But the real issues are there's only so much money to be spent. There's only so many places you can put a data center. There's only so many places you can put a power plant. And it will take a while to do that. And so that will slow some of the craziness down.
Plus, you've got all this renewable energy that was supposed to account for some of this usage suddenly, taken off the grid.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily taken off the grid, but it pencils out in the same way because it's no longer being subsidized. And so that is an issue.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Speaking
So if you're no longer subsidizing it, is it still worthwhile? And then if you take it off the grid, the costs go up, the cost of power goes up, and that will definitely be an issue in some places, like Texas, which has a largely deregulated energy environment. The prices will go up, people will be upset, and then they'll have to figure out what they're going to do. And that will all of a sudden make all of Landman's critiques of clean energy sort of beside the point, because they're going to need to put some of those, kick some of those windmills back into order.
November 14th or around there, we have season 2 debuting. I'll be there, Taylor. I'm with your show.
Taylor loves you. He knows he's your.
What did you think of Gavin Newsom's new Twitter campaign? Have you seen it? Or X campaign? It's genius.
I thought it was pretty entertaining, but here's the deal, because we're talking here about AI. It's like
right or left, you have to appreciate the comedy. I don't know who's writing for it.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, but what's interesting is we are on the precipice of a really interesting time, which is people are going to take all of Don Trump's stuff, all his tweets, all their posts on True Social, and all that stuff that he reposts, and take all that, throw that into an LLM, and say, take that and invert it, and use it to critique him in language like what he uses. That will happen. Maybe it'll happen, and this would
maybe it's already happened. Maybe that's how he's coming up with it.
Maybe that's where it's coming from, because you can then generate it and just start throwing it out, boom, 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 boom. And I suspect this may already be happening on X, particularly, now that Grok AI has a spicy setting for, shall we say, less controlled representations of the particularly female form. And I don't think that's
upsetting.
And of course, it's funny because Elon ticked off at Apple, which just scored a big how do you do with Don Trump, and saw their stock shoot up $30, about 13%, I guess.
Yeah, that was a $100 billion gift, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, he said we'll spend another $100 billion in the United States. We're going to spend $500 billion. We'll spend $600 billion. And by the time Trump's out of office, they won't be close to $600 billion. But it sounds good. Again, this is all for the headlines. It's all for the quick.
Slow walking them again, just like last time.
Yeah. So whatever. But you give the guy a hunk of Corningware glass etched with his name on it on a solid gold base, because that matters to Mr. Trump, and you're good to go. But Elon forgot to do that, so he's in trouble. So he's going to complain. He wants to sue because the App Store does not promote XAI, which includes Grok, his AI operations, and X, the social media thing, doesn't promote those. And Apple's response is like, we really only promote the family-friendly, safe for workplace stuff, and you guys aren't that. Remember the whole Nazi outbreak multiple times? Not so good for family stuff. The spicy setting on your new image generator, not so great. All the stuff on X these days, also not good. So not really fitting the Apple vision of what the store should be. So go ahead and sue. Don't think it's going to work out. Apple Insider, which follows Apple pretty closely as you can imagine, says if he actually files the suit, it would have no more than a single snowflake's chance in hell of winning, which is probably still overconfident. But I don't think it's going to go anywhere. And $3.5 trillion company, which Apple is roughly these days, even the world's richest man can't sue him into submission like he can with virtually everybody else.
Well, I think we've covered everything. We didn't go deep into the transmogrification of venue sports. It ended up happening after all. There was a partnership between Fox One and ESPN that we didn't really.
Just a bundle, you mean?
Right. But it's kind of that bundle. Sans Warner Brothers is the bundle we were talking about a year ago.
Right. But it's a whole different thing when it's no longer an MVPD or a virtual MVPD. It's two streaming apps that you can get in a bundle, just like you can get Warner Brothers and all the Disney stuff. It's just another bundle, and it's not a competitor with what Charter's putting out. It's not a competitor with what Fubo.
Yeah, it feels like a pivot to me. Just an adjustment, semantics.
Yeah, they're just trying to reduce churn a little bit and all that stuff. And I don't know.
We're all just trying to reduce
churn. It survived. Great. Whatever. Who cares? Venue is no longer a thing that matters. It's literally had a tiny window they were trying to hit, and the lawsuit did its exactly intended purpose, which was to push it past that window of possibility. And now Fubo has a new corporate owner, or 70% owner, and they're off selling sports bundles.
All right. Well, our producer needs to get to work on this masterpiece that you and I have put together.
Yeah. Maybe she can get some help from Grok AI.
We'll ask.
I'm afraid to, actually. Anyway. All right, Daniel. Good seeing you.